Companies use a specific metric to measure their earnings, something Berkshire Hathaway's Charlie Munger is not a fan of.
I don't like when investment bankers talk about EBITDA, which I translate as earnings.
EBITDA actually stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And some, including Munger, say that it is not a true reflection of a company's performance. Joining us right now to dig deeper into this is David Traynor. He's the CEO at New Constructs. David, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about how you look at earnings and how you kind of pull some of these things out to come up with a rating system.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've developed technology over the last 17 years that scans through footnotes, the management discussion and analysis to find unusual items that professors at Harvard Business School and MIT Sloan have proven shows that managers take advantage of burying certain key items in these fine print areas to manage their earnings. And so Mr. Munger's right. EBITDA is a bad number, but what most people don't realize is that those consensus earnings estimates aren't as good as you think either. There's a lot of noise in there, and when you strip them out, you can get a better and much cleaner number.
You know, the argument for either EBITDA or for one-time charges and looking at a consensus number that doesn't take some of those charges and gains into account is that you really want to know the ongoing performance of a company. Is there a time that it's okay to have charges or write-offs that are treated separately?
That's a great question, right? There's always the recurring, non-recurring charge. And philosophically, there's really not a right answer, because at what point does the recurring charge or non-recurring charge become recurring? It's a hard question. But I think, no, you're absolutely right, Becky. Like at the end of the day, what we want to understand is the core profitability of the business. And that's what we've designed our technology to focus on, core earnings, so that people can understand exactly what they can expect the profitability of the business to be. And I think the big takeaway from this research paper is that when you strip out the non-recurring or transitory items, you get a better number. You get a number that is more representative of what future earnings are going to be. And the professors also show you can generate alpha with that data. So it's something that the markets effectively are inefficient at assessing. You probably won't be surprised to learn that a lot of people aren't reading the footnotes these days because these filings are 250 pages long. That's exactly what technology, or especially our technology, is for, to relieve people of the burden required to do their diligence while still doing that diligence for them in a way that makes it easy for them to continue to do the business the way they're used to doing business.
Well, let's talk about the earnings distortion scores you've seen most recently. What are the companies that rate very highly on the distortion being a bad thing?
Yeah, well, one of the companies that rates highly this week in our earnings distortion scorecard in terms of a strong miss earnings distortion score is Apache. And what we've seen in there is they've got some unusual gains from the sale of some assets and other things. And the thing is, Becky, there's not really any one little item that you can identify as unusual that occurs all the time. There's a wide variety of things, which is precisely why this problem has been so difficult to tackle, because the amount of disclosure variety for how companies can hide unusual gains and losses is almost infinite.
When you say generate alpha, what's a trade that would have been a good trade based on the distortion scores that you saw? How long ago do you have to follow it? What kind of time frame do you generally see gains in a stock or, I guess, declines in a stock based on a distortion score?
There's two approaches here. First, Harvard Business School and MIT Sloan designed a long-short portfolio that went long the companies with the most understated earnings, or where the adjustments or unusual items were causing the earnings to be understated relative to real core earnings. And they went short the companies with the most overstated earnings, or the companies that had the most unusual gains propping up their unadjusted earnings. And that was a portfolio that they would turn over around once a year, right, based on the 10K data. And that's how they were able to show that markets are inefficient and analysts were inefficient in impounding this information in that portfolio. On a shorter term basis, we have created this earnings distortion score, which is based on the exact same methodology in terms of the math that the Harvard Business School and MIT Sloan professors use to develop their long-short portfolio. And our earnings distortion score simply predicts those companies which are most likely to beat or miss based on how understated or overstated their consensus earnings estimates are relative to core earnings. So as you mentioned, we're looking to identify companies that have high levels of earnings distortion as most likely to miss, low levels of earnings distortion as most likely to beat.
Okay. David, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Also, a programming note, don't forget to join us Monday for a very special edition of Squawk Box. If you have any questions for legendary investor Warren Buffett.